mean, last year we had a presentation and people just really wanted to ask us questions. So that's mostly what we want to turn this into. We're just going to have a discussion. So let's just talk.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? You got one right back there. How's it going?
Hey, do you can you recommend? Are there any like cheaper options in a Framemeister?
There's actually quite a few. We're working on a video now that's going to be Framemeister alternatives. Amazon has a $50 scaler that's like not that amazing, but I mean if you're looking for some basic starting point, like there's plenty of options. Plus there's some homebrew options that are in the works.
Yeah, I was actually hoping to have got more testing done on this unit. I'm borrowing a unit called the OSSC. It's open source scan converter. And I had hoped before I came here I would have a little more of an understanding of its capabilities and results than I do now. I just didn't have time to dig into it as much as I had hoped. There's another thing called the DVD-O, which I think is kind of not really made anymore, but it's like a very fast scaler, but it doesn't really do that great with 240p. But some people chain that.
It's very good with 480i.
Yeah, some people chain that together with other scalers for particular results. But yeah, we're working on that. Hopefully, that should release hopefully in July. That's our goal.
Yeah.
That's going to be a look at these other options. But of course, remember that's only the options for connecting to an HD TV. And if you want to go the CRT route, then obviously that in some ways can be cheaper, in some ways can be just as expensive.
It's getting more expensive as time goes on now.
But yes, there are alternatives, but don't necessarily expect them to look as good or be as fast. Or if they are faster, don't necessarily expect them to look as good as the Framemeister. But the thing I always like to say is the Framemeister, before you buy it, it seems so expensive, and then after you buy it, it's like it doesn't even seem that outrageous anymore because it's just so helpful for even just recording games, so you can get a really clean recording. Even, some people play on a CRT, but anyway, I'm getting off topic here, so.
But there's a lot of options.
Look forward.
We'll be covering a lot more in depth very soon.
First off, I wanted to say thank you for your recommendation on Framemeister. On one personally, at first I was like, oh man, is this gonna be worth it? But it's totally been worth it. However, my question is that I've kind of noticed a lot in your videos in terms of the D terminal, you tend to get the adapter. Are you guys kind of like anti going directly into the D terminal?
It's more convenient, I think, for us for the connections that we have.
I find the prices tend to be a little bit more reasonable if you do directly to the D terminal.
Right, like I've been looking into the GameCube D terminal because it's a bit cheaper. But what I probably end up doing if I did that is just getting a D terminal to component and then just running it into the component. Then
Yeah, basically the short answer to that is D terminal is Japan's component. Both of them are YPB-PR component signal. Well, I say component, but the component just means it's broken out into multiple parts. Even RGB B and C cables that you would put in a PBM, those are technically a sort of component because it's broken out. And so we just have that RCA form factor that goes in. They have the single plug D terminal, and so it just converts the cable. It's no different than converting SCART to BNC. So there's no upside or downside to either. It's just that component cables are a heck of a lot easier to come across here, and component switchers and that kind of thing.
It's just easier to work with, with switchers.
Yeah, I didn't know if you found any difference in terms
of there's no quality difference.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
So working with component is obviously a lot easier when you're working with more modern televisions. What do you lose when there's a lot of boxes out there that you can buy that I guess transcode RGB SCART to component. You can get it for like $50 on eBay. What are you losing when you do that?
White balance, pretty much.
Yeah.
So you'll see some more. The image is a bit more saturated when you're using a component.
Yeah. It takes more adjustment, but sometimes we get comments on our videos that say, hey, you guys aren't giving component enough credit. Component is mathematically equivalent to RGB, and they're not wrong. It's just a different way of, I don't know if encoding is the correct word, but it's a different way of just conveying the same information. But RGB is kind of plug and play. Like it says, okay, TV or Scalar or whatever you're connected to, it just says this color is this color. And it makes it that color. So like for example, if you connect RGB into a PVM, you'll notice that a lot of the adjustment dials when you're using RGB do nothing because it just tells it what it should be. And if you use component, you can adjust the saturation and brightness and other things. It takes more work to get the same results with component, but technically speaking, nothing should be missing. So it is absolutely a very valid route to go down.
What do you find the best way to hook up Dreamcast? I've seen some like mixed things saying go Coury to get the Scart, but then you're losing some stuff. Like, do you think S-Video is just the...
Well, we're using a device called the Toro right now, which goes, which plugs directly in, and it converts the VGA signal to and outputs it via Scart, so you can do 480p over Scart. Looks really great, I think. But I mean, Dreamcast has like a ton of options. I know that somebody here, Stone Age Gamer, is showing an HDMI mod for it.
Have you stopped by there yet?
No, we haven't seen it.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, supposedly if you look for the Stone Age Gamers booth here, they have a Dreamcast HDMI mod that they are debuting here. We want to do a Saturn video first, but Dreamcast gets a lot more requests. So we'll see what, it just depends on this HDMI mod. It feels kind of weird,
like kind of going out of order like that, but a lot of it comes down to when things become available. Like GameCube happened so much earlier than we ever planned on doing it because of the HDMI mod, and we had access to it, so we fast track it. So
I think another important point to make with Dreamcast, and this is nothing that I've really tested out myself, but this is what I understand to be true. If you use a Scart cable straight out of the Dreamcast, you can't get 480p. It's pulling a different kind of signal, but there's nothing inherent about Scart that makes it so that you can't use 480p over Scart. It's just that the system will output it over that connection. So the Toro box that we use, which is like what, $80? It's a little expensive.
They should be, but I think that whoever, like the Bihar Bros or whoever makes it, it kind of goes out of stock and is out of stock for a while.
They make various other things. So like the Toro is like kind of their premium one because it outputs. It's a box, and then it's got a VGA connector that you can use, or a Scart connector, which in that case you can get 480p straight out of there. Yeah. Take it to your Framemeister or PVM, because the Framemeister will accept 480p over the RGB input.
Yeah. And some Dreamcast games have a way to force 240p also. So
yeah, and you've got a lot more Dreamcast games than I do, but I think some games won't work if the system is outputting 480p. Is that right?
Right. I think it has to support.
Yeah, but
I think I've heard that it forces games that don't support it.
Yeah, I don't really know. You think that the Toro box specifically
does? Yes, I'm pretty sure it can force 480p.
Yeah, that's not something I've had an opportunity to test that much.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So at the end of the GameCube episode, you really sort of left me hanging on the game. Like, how do I get the best picture for a Game Boy and have it be affordable?
For Game Boy.
Game Boy. Well, black and white Game Boy, I would imagine is Super Game Boy.
Well,
Super Nintendo.
Game Boy is actually going to be.
Game Boy is the next console-specific episode. I'm hoping that'll possibly be August. If not August, then definitely September, I would say. And I actually just spent a lot of time earlier this week capturing from the HD My Boy. It's a prototype that some guys in the Netherlands are making that outputs Game Boy and HDMI. It's apparently a pretty easy mod to do even yourself. That just gives the Game Boy and HDMI output. Now, that, of course, you can't use the Game Boy Color exclusives, and you don't get the Super Game Boy Color palettes and stuff like that. Do you have a Framemeister or a PVM?
I have it up to
Okay, so in my opinion, I feel like you're missing out a lot if you aren't using the Super Game Boy Color palettes, because there's so many games that have really cool color palettes with the Super Game Boy, and no other Game Boy device takes advantage of those palettes, and I think that's such a shame. So I think the Super Game Boy should absolutely be a part of the equation in your setup. Super Game Boy 2 specifically, because it runs at a more accurate speed to a real Game Boy. The regular Super Game Boy is actually a little faster, which is kind of weird, but Super Game Boy 2, I mean, you can see them on the show floor here for like $35. They're not that expensive, and of course, it's all region free. So I definitely recommend that. But something that I mean, like you say, the GameCube episode left you hanging a little bit. There's a lot of open-ended questions in that because it's just not a clear-cut answer, really, how to go with the GameCube. Something that I think would be really great, and a conclusion that I came to, was if you got a PAL GameCube and used RGB out, use the Game Boy interface, which is homebrew software that you can force 240p out of, runs better and more accurately than Nintendo's official Game Boy player software. Get RGB out of the PAL GameCube, launch homebrew, and I mean, you don't need to worry about the fact that PAL GameCube won't do 480p out of the RGB if your only focus is Game Boy. So I think that, I mean, both of those are options that are going to be pretty all-encompassing for Game Boy, or relatively so. So I mean, I don't really know.
I don't know if we've confused them more. Or
yeah,
not.
maybe, I don't know. Like, so this is obviously going to be present a lot more clearly and concisely in the Game Boy episode. So maybe just wait for that. But those are the ones that are most interesting to me.
Kind of building on what he was just saying, have you found an ED controller option for the GameCube Game Boy player? I mean, I've been looking for the Horis.
Right. Well, we just did a episode on Game Boy controller adapters, and you know, like there's a way to use well, I mean, a person called RAFnet Technology does a lot of controller adapters, and you can get like a Super NES to GameCube adapter, which would be great.
Yeah, we didn't test that one. I didn't know it even existed, but I tested the GameCube to N64 controller adapter. I even tested using the Hori pad on the N64, which was kind of neat. But yeah, it's like a super cool thing. So like, I really want to try more of the RAFnet adapters. But I mean, I don't know how much that one costs, but like, it's in Canada, but I think US price, it converts to like $25 for a lot of the adapters.
It's worth it.
So it definitely look into it. I know the N64 one is reprogrammable if you want to like change how the buttons are mapped. I don't know if the Super Nintendo to GameCube is, but that sounds like a great option.
Yeah.
I got an editing question. The first one would be, where do you all go for like resources for like light leaks and things like that? And how do you know when you're done with a video?
How do we know when we're done? Well, like I join up with like a lot of like Facebook groups, you know, like moving to Premiere Pro was a good one, and like a lot of people always post up like free plugins, or you know, in terms of like knowing when we're done, probably we know when we're done when we like have to like get the episode out.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really important. I think.
So you actively hate it?
Sometimes Corey especially does. Sometimes
there's sometimes like this controller adapters, it like got completely out of control. And
it was going to be like 40 minutes.
Yeah, we had to cut out a segment, which we ended up releasing today.
Yeah.
When you have to like make a series, and you know, it's very important, especially I think as editors, we know this. It's like it's more important like get it done and get it out, because if you don't, you're just gonna like sit on it and be like, I want to change this, and it will never. It's not worth the amount of like hassle, like anguishing over. You get it out. And then you say, okay, next time I'm going to improve on this.
Yeah.
And you just keep on getting stuff out.
Yeah. You got to fight your perfectionist tendencies.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that you get something out there, and get it out there relatively frequently. You know, I mean, just don't let it go on and on and on forever. Just get stuff done.
With other controller adapters I've used, they usually have a significant amount of lag. Did the RAFnet ones?
We didn't get any.
Yeah,
lag.
we didn't feel any lag. Like, I mean, we didn't have a good way to do a lag test for those particular systems.
There's something we'd like to invest in where you can like have a
an
light
LED.
illuminate. Yeah. When you it's completely compressed.
I did a little bit of a test for the NES Retro Receiver, which is a wireless receiver for the NES that is the video that we released today. And it wasn't like super scientific at all because I just have this slow motion picture of me hitting the button, and who knows when the thing is actually being depressed when you're just looking at it. But I determined that there was at most 1 frame of lag, and I'm sure that the RAFnet adapters are the same, if not better. Actually, on the RAFnet side, I think there are some figures of what the milliseconds are. It's it's
the
almost
Genesis,
imperceptible.
The Wii remote one that I had like a 3 millisecond.
If you're a hardcore speedrunner and you have to do all these frame perfect jumps and stuff, you might notice something. But I think most people aren't going to
using controller adapters for stuff like that.
If you're not that hardcore about it, you're probably not looking into controller adapters anyway. So there are some bad ones out there, but like RAFnet we know is good. The retro receiver we know is good. So
I remember last year you had mentioned that one of your co-contributors or whatnot was working on precompiled settings for the Framemeister that you could put it in. Are you guys going to release an episode of like how to do that?
We're going to be focusing on him. Firebrand X is a pixel purist, and also there's a gentleman that runs a channel called Implant Games that we want to focus on because his profiles are a bit different as well. And I think that they both kind of offer something that, different kind of approaches.
Yeah, just do a Google search for Pixel Purist, and you can download it as long as your Framemeister firmware is up to date. You can load those profiles, and they're basically integer scaled to be, exactly four times scale vertically or 5 times scale vertically, which will cut a little bit off. Now, they only really work correctly if you're set to 1080p. He doesn't make them for 720p, at least not right now.
Is there a particular setting you go into to access those?
You go, there's in the current firmware of the Framemeister, there's a data option in there. You just go, you say load select, and then you just have you can have like 20 profiles on the micro SD card, and you just choose it for the systems that you want. And like I said, you can choose 4x or 5x scale. I use 5x.
He has different profiles for like different scale.
Depending on whether you like, if you're okay with a little bit of overscan gain cutoff, use the 5x. If you gotta see the whole thing, but you're okay with it being a little smaller, use 4x. But yeah, they're really good profiles. I actually sent him my homebrew launcher for GameCube, and so he could make Game Boy Advance profiles because he didn't have the stuff to do that, because I really wanted those perfect Game Boy Advance profiles, and it looks phenomenal. It fills most of the screen. I also sent him my PSP Go so that he could make PSP profiles, and it's so cool because the PSP does a perfect scale to fill, because how when PSP is like really tiny in the screen, he got it to fill the whole screen exactly, and it looks so surreal. It's so cool. And another side note that I won't elaborate on too much, he's also done some work on getting a better RGB palette for the NES. That's more accurate to how it looked over composite. Like, you've got clear, but the color's more accurate to composite, the composite look of NES, and it just looks a lot easier on the eyes. And so I actually got those flashed to my NES RGB board, and it looks great. So in fact, the episode that came out today, all the footage in that episode is using the new profile, and I really like the way it looks, or the new color palette.
You had a question?
There are a lot of new mods coming out, custom hardware and things that are focusing on HDMI, but I know a lot of us here use CRTs. So what's the best way, as these mods get more and more affordable, what's the best way to bring that back to a CRT that doesn't have HDMI?
Ooh.
Well, the something cool that just happened with the N64, and Coury is interested in this because I primarily use the Framemeister. Coury primarily uses a PBM right now. Something cool that happened, the de-blur effect is like the big competitive edge that the Ultra HDMI has. Well, some people figured out how to do the de-blur with the RGB board. Now when I say the RGB board, I'm talking about that's the one Tim Worthington, the guy in Australia, made.
It's a board.
Yeah, it's just a board. And if you're talking about the little inexpensive one that you can install on early N64 consoles, no, you can't do it on that, because this is like an actual highly developed board that you can flash different firmware to it. And Tim Worthington agreed to add that as a feature to the firmware, so you can actually flash existing boards with the firmware to just do like a toggle between deblur on, deblur off. So some of those features are being introduced to the RGB world. Something that I don't know a lot about is I think some BVMs have like SDI digital inputs. That's something I actually didn't know until someone was talking to us about it at MagFest. It's something that neither of us have on our screen. So
Even PBMs have those with additional card slots.
yeah,
Right,
so and my PVM doesn't have the expansion capability on it. So that's something I would love to see, but convert, I've experience at work with converting HDMI to SDI, which is a pretty seamless process. I don't know if it potentially adds any lag, but I would love to see about digital inputs on PVMs and BVMs. I think that'd be really cool to look into. So in that sense, the digital mods could be something to look into, but again, I don't know if lag is a factor in that case. You probably still couldn't play Duck Hunt, if I had my guess.
I mean, just in
That's
terms
just a
of getting
guess.
that HDMI to like a CRT, I kind of messed around with like a cheap HDMI to composite, and it makes it 480i, and I mean, it's not really really worth it. Obviously, it's like a $20 thing.
And one problem you might run into is that the output would be widescreen, which would
which is
become
like this.
letterbox on your TV, and I don't know if there's a way around that. I mean, that's just speculation. I haven't tested it.
Right. I have a HDMI to component, but it doesn't do any downscaling. I mean, that's something that we should probably look into in the future, but no real amazing answers, I guess, right now.
What CRTs would you recommend besides PBMs and DVMs for?
I'm a big Toshiba fan.
Yeah, the later generation Toshiba is like made around 2004, 2005. They're silver. They have a flat surface. Those, generally speaking, a lot of people really recommend those, and we both just lucked into having some.
No.
As far as I have seen, I have never seen a CRT that does 480p that doesn't also do HD, which it never makes the right look, in my opinion. It doesn't have like scan lines like an HD CRT. Doesn't have scan lines. It looks kind of crappy, in my opinion. But you see ED TVs for like early LCD TVs, and that looks pretty good for 480p. I don't think it's amazing or anything, but CRTs are definitely more Coury's area of knowledge. But if anyone ever finds just a plain consumer ED TV CRT, I'd love to know about it, because I'd love to test one. I have no idea what it looks like.
Since Sony and Microsoft kind of seem intent on pushing everybody into 4K gaming, are there any scalers that would actually accurately scale to 4K resolution?
That's something that we need to. Neither of us have 4K TVs yet, but like there's a big thing with 240p is it's like a perfect scale of 4K.
4K is pretty interesting because it is as you probably know, a 2x scale from 1080p to 4K. But what I didn't realize until, several months ago, this blew my mind, 720p is a 3x scale to 4K. So those are both perfect integer scales to 4K. In theory, those should be clean and fast. To scale both of those resolutions, in theory, 720p should be even better on a 4K TV than a 1080p TV. But again, I haven't tested it, but that's just in theory. I don't know how clean or sharp or smooth or whatever the scale would be, but in theory, that also means, 720p, 240p is 3x to 720, which means it's 6x to 4K. So, there's all sorts of possibilities we'd love to test there and how the Framemeister deals with it. But in theory, I don't think there's necessarily much of a need for direct scaling straight all the way to 4K, because the Framemeister, whether you have it set to 720 or 1080, should in theory do pretty well to 4K, but we'd love to test it.
I'd love to see how it looks in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for OLED to go down in price before I buy a 4K TV. Because if I buy a 4K TV now, because you can get relatively cheap ones, but then I'll feel like it's outdated as soon as OLED is affordable.
A lot of what you guys cover is on the preservation of old games, right? You're going back playing these old things. With the big push towards VR, have you ever considered what happens with that in the future? Would it be difficult to like showcase games to other people if only one person can see it through a headset.
You know, I remember we got a funny comment one time that was like, all this stuff you're talking about is irrelevant because one day we'll be using VR and you'll just look at a CRT in your VR and play your old games. I hope one day I look back at this video and I say ha 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 because it actually happened, but I don't think that's going to portray an accurate view of.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll always see like an appeal of really experiencing it in front of our own eyes. But.
Yeah, I am interested in VR more so now that they said Resident Evil 7 was going to be fully playable in VR. Before then, I wasn't like, I don't know if I need to buy it, but now I'm like, oh gosh, can I scrounge together the money to do that before Resident Evil 7 comes out? I don't know.
With the increased popularity of retro gaming in the community, could you ever see another, I don't know, say a Kickstarter or something for an independent company to start manufacturing CRTs specifically for gaming interests?
I think that'd be really cool if that happens. I think if somebody did that, it would get funded.
Yeah.
For sure. You know, just based on, you know, the enthusiasts that are into it, you know, and how PBMs and BBMs are just like skyrocketing in price now. And for like a couple of years ago, they couldn't give them away. Even professional ones.
Yeah, what I think would be more realistic, because there's just no I assume there's the manufacturing pipeline for CRTs just basically doesn't even exist anymore. So I think the only reason those were affordable was because they were making so many. Now I'm afraid that it would be perhaps prohibitively expensive to even do that. What I would like to see, what I think is maybe more realistic, is if someone takes modern technology, makes a flat screen TV using OLED or some sort of LCD technology, but it's designed to do a much truer approximation of the CRT look and handle 240p correctly. I feel like that might be more realistic to happen, to see a sort of an independent person create something like that. Yeah, basically a scaler, but built into the TV, but a really good one, like maybe even, hopefully, possibly even better than what something like the Framemeister would do. That'd be really nice, I think. But who knows? I think it could happen.
When I was watching your video on your setups, like, you guys, this is absolutely crazy what you guys got on. You guys keep schematics and lists of how your cables run, so
yeah, I just sort of just make it up as I go. Like, yeah. I look at all my cables, they're like, they're like my children, I know, I look at them like, I know what power adapter that is. I know what cable, what system that goes to. I just don't really think about it. I just know how it works.
It's kind of a sickness, I think, because, I'm always saying what can I change? Sometimes I just change things just because I can, I guess, and I think about how I'm gonna work it out. I always, I say in the video, I got a lot of the streamlining that I've done is just from stopping at Goodwill, seeing what kind of things they have there, and how can I take something that seems like it would be really convenient, and how can I integrate that into what I already have?
I follow the opposite approach to you guys. I only leave one system out at a time, and I'll take the other ones and box them up and put them somewhere else.
I've heard of people who do that.
I did that when I lived in New York City. I had everything in storage, and I just pulled the ones out that I wanted to play. I keep my new systems out, just hooked up. But and once I had kids, I don't now where I have everything set up, it's all in the attic, and kids never come up there really. But I kept everything in a dresser that I just open up and pull the things out and hook it up one at a time. I think that maybe that's one of the reasons I've just kind of gone so far in the other direction, is because I lived with that for so long.
I've pretty much always just had a compulsion to have all my systems hooked up and ready to go. I've never really let that go, except when I briefly thought, no, I'm never going to play the NES again, and then ever since late '90s, I've always had all my systems hooked up.
So most PBMs that I've used and noticed have some kind of looping. You can loop the signal through, right? I haven't heard you guys talk about that at all. Does it have any effects on the screen? I know it has termination issues if you don't terminate the signals properly.
Well, some of them have, mine have it built in already. I don't have to use any of the 75 ohm terminators. But that's how I they're made like they have ins and outs, so you can chain them all together, which I actually do. Where I go from my little PBM and I run a cable all the way around to my bigger PBM, and then that goes out to a BNC to SCART male, and that plugs into a SCART to component, and then that goes into another CRT, just like a consumer CRT. So the good thing about PBMs is it passes that signal even if one of them's not on. Yeah, which I think is, considering I just use my little one to kind of shoot video off of, and that one is closest to my setup, so I have my shorter cable going into that. That one pretty much stays off all the time. I've noticed kind of weirdness with component. If you have component ins and outs, and the outs are not connected to anything, you'll kind of get like a weird kind of rolling in it until you, like if that's running into like a CRT or something, you'll get that rolling, but as soon as you turn on that CRT, then it'll go away.
Yeah, I've noticed that with S-Video as well. Looped S-Video through the PBMs. Yeah, because I have one PBM and then it loops to another and then to a capture card. And I've got two separate capture cards, one's for SD and S-Video, and the other one's for HD with the component. And I've noticed that sometimes if one set isn't on or it's not properly connected, the termination on the S-Video and the component does differ. Right. And you can actually wind up with that rolling or like a really white screen or something like that.
Yeah. I just recently got, this wasn't in the setup video, but I got a component distributor where I can run the out from that into this, and this thing is always powered, so it never... it is powered? Yeah, so it just, like, it eliminates the rolling, and I can, never have to worry about it. But that distributor goes to, like, 3 different sources. Like, I have one going into, like, my studio room where I kind of shoot things with things on screen, and one of them goes to my... another capture card that can record at 240p, which I've never really done. I pretty much did it so that I can stream from 2 sources at the same time if I wanted to.
Which you've never done, but...
Which I've never done.
You could!
But I can. Yeah, I can. And the other one just goes to a consumer CRT.
Yeah. Two-part question. One, have you found any viable options in terms of Scart Switchers? And 2, in terms of the NES, do you find the added sound mod is a mod you would tend to recommend, or do you not feel there's enough games?
Makes it stereo?
Like for the like the VC7, like on the Famicom.
Oh, I don't really know anything about the mod to get the extra sound channel that the Famicom version can do. I don't really know anything about that mod. I mean, I've got a Famicom, so I don't really worry about it. I don't really think about it too much. My opinion would be I wouldn't really fool with it just for that. I'm pretty sure that the HDMI mod for the NES, I was borrowing one for a little bit, and we have an episode on that. I didn't go into detail on the sound stuff, but I'm pretty sure there's a sound option in there that lets you take advantage of that. So if you went the HDMI mod route for NES,
I have the NES RGB.
Yeah, so that's the one that I think I would recommend in general, just because there's nothing. I mean, I like the HDMI mod.
That would be a really good. Like, I would like to do it. Like, I had no idea that mod existed. Maybe that might be a good 2-part or 1 episode for that, and cover the Master System FM mod.
Yeah, that one is a lot more well known in terms of modding for Master System, and I'm actually going to test a PowerBase Mini FM.
It's PowerBase Mini.
Yeah, in the Genesis. So I've only got one Master System game right now, but
What was the other question? About Scart Switchers, right?
Yeah. So you should watch our tour video that we released like 3 or 4 weeks ago, which Coury kind of glosses over, and I thought, oh no, if Coury just like says, hey, I've got this Scart Switcher, then people are going to ask all kinds of questions about Scart Switchers if I didn't go into more detail on my part. So we didn't want to tell everything because we are at some time in the
very near future.
We say very near future. I don't even know how, there's so many episodes we need to get to. That we're going to go more in detail about various Scart Switchers, but it's called the G-Scart. at first they were very difficult to get because it's 8 inputs. It's got 2 outputs. It's got a SCART output and a VGA styled.
It's like a D-sub.
D-sub output. You can do VGA signal out of it, or you could just do RGB sync, which could go to like a PBM, which is what I do now. But it's 8 inputs, automatic switching, works awesome. I haven't done like exact tests of, if there's any quality loss, but it sure doesn't look like it. It's amazing. It's over $200. It's pretty expensive, but if you can afford it, it's the one to get. There's also the Extron interface, but that's a lot more hardcore. Because you have to get really specialized cables.
To do it,
so this is definitely, if you're going SCART, it's the one to get. It's totally worth it for the number of inputs. And if you need more, like I kind of do, you can daisy chain them together. I've had a prototype of the G-SCART for almost 2 years now, and it works basically the same. So I've got that one, which was a lot less expensive, chained to the new one. But what's cool is you used to, the first round of this finalized G-SCART or semi-finalized G-SCART, that was more widely released. You had to order it through RetroRGB.com. They sold out in 15 minutes or something. Now the guy who's making them isn't going through RetroRGB. Do you know where to go?
I think you go to the Retro. It has a link.
Okay. Just search G-SCART or G-SCART SW for G-SCART Switch, and you can. He's doing a thing right now where every time there's 100 pre-orders, he sends off the order in more manufacturers. So it's going to be just perpetual pre-orders. If you're the first one on the list, you'll be waiting a little longer. If you're the 100th, then, congrats, you probably won't be waiting very long to get yours. But it's, we highly recommend it, and we'll go into more depth. But if you want sort of a preview of it, go to our tour video.
It's expensive, but it's totally worth it.
It's worth it if you want to use SCART.
Or if you're using JP21, he is selling a JP21 version of it.
Yeah.
Is there any Game Gear mods that you can just...
Yeah. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of systems from Bob at Retro RGB that we're going to be covering. I've been kind of talking to somebody about getting to get a consoleized Game Gear. You ever seen those mini Master System?
It looks awesome. It's just like a cut down Master System. It looks so.
Well, that's what it is.
I know, but it looks like a real product that Sega would have made. It just looks so cool.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I want to play on Game Gear. I don't have any Game Gear games, but I want one because it just looks so cool. I'll find some games I want to play.
Tim Worthington does have a RGB output mod for it.
For an actual Game Gear.
Yeah. And the one I have right now just has it inside and has like a D-sub out, and I just run that out to, he lent me a Extron device. Yeah, but it's a bigger, it's just in the bottom, just cut into the bottom of it. But it's Game Gear is fairly easy, I guess. Of course there's a lot of, there's modding involved, but it's not as, people have already thought of it.
Yeah, it's so close to how the Master System hardware works.
Of course it's going to show up, it shows up very small, and that's where the profiles and stuff will really work for it. You fill out the screen with it.
Has he made profiles for those?
No.
Probably not. Yeah.
No, not yet.
Do you guys plan on ever covering the NeoGeo?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was supposed to already happen.
Okay.
I swear it's the videos are very they're time consuming, and some we have to do other episodes in between because just for our sanity's sake, I think, because we just go.
They are very
mad.
tough. Yeah.
After this, anyways, NeoGeo was supposed to happen a while ago. I have access to just about every version of NeoGeo, and I just got a consoleized MVS myself. It's just that there's a lot of people, people are asking for, the Scart Switchers, Framemeister alternatives. People want
CRT geometry.
Yeah, CRT geometry. It's I'm terrified to do it because it can be such a big thing, and I think that people are expecting a really easy kind of just show me how to do it and it'll be fixed. But it's every single CRT is going to be different because it depends on the capacitors in it and how they've aged.
The funny thing about that is you're talking to this guy in California who's 70 years old, but he's this old TV repair guy who really knows this stuff and repairs PBMs. It's a hobby at this point because he's retired.
He gets them and sells them the Game Boys.
But that just goes to show how that knowledge is getting lost with an older generation.
It's pretty fascinating and kind of scary because the people that know how to fix CRTs are going to slowly like die out, and nobody's going to know how to do it. Same kind of thing is kind of happening with in the arcade scene with people that make like MAME are all older, and nobody else is coming in and take their place to like figure stuff out because nobody knows how to use nobody knows how to fix this stuff.
Yeah, that's why all this preservation is so important, because I mean, I'm sure some people can reverse engineer how this stuff works if they didn't have experience with it back in the day, but it's crazy.
But NeoGeo, it'll happen very soon.
I'm kind of on the fence whether I should get an AES and an adapter to an MVS, just for like authenticity,
Well, I mean, the MVS are the same thing, obviously. Like, I think consoleized MVS is probably the best way to go, because AES stuff is just like so crazy out of like we were talking about somebody bought like a copy of Blazing Star for AES and it was like $4,000.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know whether or not to do the adapter to like the MVS games, but still have like the real AES system.
I got a Omega from ArcadeWorks, and it kind of like looks like an AES. Yeah, and I mean, like, obviously, like, the plastic doesn't feel like is heavy duty, but I really like it.
Do you plan for a TurboGrafx/PC Engine?
Oh yeah.
We would have loved to have done that like a year ago. The only TurboGrafx between us is a PC Engine Duo that Coury has.
Yeah.
I don't have
There's
one.
There's just like a ton of revisions that, that's another one that's like kind of scary because
the community is passionate.
Well, no. That's one of the reasons. Like NeoGeo is kind of scary too, because the community they're like, very passionate and like can be at times hard to please.
We don't bite, I promise.
PC Engine stuff is something like I love the system, but it's just there's so many different revisions that that's a lot of material gathering and expensive.
Yeah, and hopefully we can borrow some stuff. We do have our hands on a mod-free adapter.
Yeah.
I just need the system to put it in, and I'll be honest, Coury, the style of games that's on TurboGrafx is more Coury's style than mine, so it's been a little tough for me to pull that trigger.
Yeah.
It's expensive too, so.
Yes, sir.
How does the mod-free adapter work? I asked because I have a TurboGrafx. I'm still outputting hard.
It plugs right into the back of it. You cannot use CD. You cannot play. It plugs in where the CD plugs into.
Because that's designed to pass RGB through to the CD anyway. Now, we have heard from someone that their version of that from DB Electronics, is that right?
It struggles with
the frame. He couldn't get his to work on the Framemeister. He was asking me, and I said, "Well, I have it. I have the device, but we haven't had a chance to test it with a working NeoGeo or a working TurboGrafx yet."
Right.
So I don't know if there could be an issue with that, but we do know that the actual mod works with the Framemeister.
Right.
I have one that I got from eBay. I think it's Retro Monkey. I think it's his username, and it does component. I haven't investigated the RGB one bit, but
you just put it through the expansion.
It basically goes through the CD port in the back, and it tends to work fairly well. I mean, it's still not good. It's better than RF, I'll put it that way.
The thing that makes me sad about that is then you can't play Rondo of Blood, and that's like
the
only game I want to play on TurboGrafx.
That's what you say now.
That is what I say now. I said the same thing about Genesis, and I ended up buying a bunch of Genesis games. So.
When you guys are shooting episodes, are you swapping out lenses all the time, or do you go with a one-size-fits-all approach?
I kind of generally stick with one. I have like 4 different lenses, but we just shot something yesterday and we were using a bunch of different ones.
Yeah, see, I didn't really expect that. I was shooting up until the end of last year on Nikon camera, and I only had 2 lenses for it. I had a zoom lens that I used for almost everything, and I had a macro lens that I used to get like really tight shots of small stuff.
We have like a habit of getting really overly close with our shots
I started having problems with that camera, so I sold all my Nikon stuff and I got a Panasonic GH4. And at first I only started with 1 lens for it. It was a 25 millimeter, which for that camera is equivalent to like a 50 millimeter, and it's just a good all-around focal length for everything. It's a prime lens. It doesn't zoom at all, and I use that for most everything, especially since the GH4 shoots 4K. It's actually the lens that's on that camera right there in front of Game Dave. since it shoots 4K, I can basically get a macro lens effect by zooming in with it. But I also got a wide-angle lens more recently, which I couldn't have even done the tour video without that. So I don't change lenses frequently in production, but we do a little bit. But we're not like super hardcore about getting the exact right lens for the shot. Like I said, just get stuff done. People complain that we've sometimes got dust on our consoles. Well, if we spend forever making them look absolutely perfect, we would never release an episode. So yes, have high standards, but don't be so picky about that you just never get anything done. Just shoot it and go with it.
A thing that I like to use also is like these kind of macro lenses that fit on the end. They kind of screw onto the end of your lens. I don't have a macro lens, and this is kind of a good way to get like a 4x magnification.
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff.
it's not like a perfect effect, but it looks cool. Like it's got some character to the look.
Yeah,
I love that. What was it? Metal Storm shot where you just like move it in front of it. It's zoomed. It looks cool. They look cool. So there's options with that, but you don't have to go crazy with lenses, I don't think.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
In the spirit of Too Many Games, since we're here, are you guys hoping to find anything? Like, are you on the lookout for like one particular game or something like that?
Well, I've been on the lookout for years for a black label Kirby's Air Ride, and that is the last Kirby game I need to buy, and I have a complete collection, so I already did that. So, I've bought a few other things. I used to have like sort of a mental list, but now the list of retro things that I want has just kind of expanded so much. I just have a loose idea. When I see one of the things, I'm like, oh yeah, I was kind of interested in that. I brought a set amount of cash this year, so I don't do what I did last year, which was a mistake.
For me, I mean, I'll always be on the lookout for GameCube component cables. I passed up a set for about $130 about 2.5 years ago, and I remember we were walking out of the store.
I told you should buy it.
Yeah. And
Peer pressure.
I did see a set, but they were quite pricey.
Yeah. I mean, I could just wait for the mod, but that's like the last thing. Then I can like eliminate anything that's like below like everything is component RGB or HDMI in my setup.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And